Hello aviators! Today we have a video about the most important and the most epic Boeing aircraft. Most people of course can say that would be the huge and legendary Boeing 747, but I'll surprise you. The most important aircraft in the company's history is their smallest one. Boeing 737 is a twin-engine narrow-body airliner developed in the late 1960s. For now, in 2018, 737 is the company's only single-aisle model. The aircraft is the exact definition of the expression impressive industrial performance. It is the most popular passenger jetliner in the world. Since the beginning of production in 1966, over 10,000 aircraft have been delivered, and the company itself has a portfolio of orders for nearly 5,000 units more. And, I might add, about 1,200 aircraft of this model are flying in the air right now, at this very moment.
Would you like to know more?
In 1963, Boeing released its brand new Boeing 727 airliner. This three-engine aircraft perfectly complemented the large Boeing 707 on the main roads, primarily on regional flights. However, always dissatisfied airlines wanted one more aircraft, smaller and more economical. Just after the 727 started its operations in 1964, the guys from Boeing had already begun their work, and initially the plane was supposed to accommodate 50-60 passengers and fly for 1,600 kilometers. Just a baby. In addition, Boeing wasn't even going to do any special tricks. Just make a small version of 727s with two engines and a T-tail. And at that moment, the legendary Joe Sutter showed up. He proposed to keep the standard fuselage diameter and to mount the engines under the wing to reduce maintenance costs. In 1965, the approved design was showed publicly. This was the schemes of the future Boeing 737. The starting customers were German Lufthansa and American United Airlines. However, the capacity of 60 people and a distance of 1,600 kilometers did not impress them. The Germans wanted a 100-seat plane, and the Americans added a couple dozen more seats. Boeing decided to oblige both, creating two models with different lengths of the fuselage, which became the first models 737-100 and 737-200. The guys from Seattle didn't have much time, competitors were not resting. BAC 111, Douglas DC-9 and Fokker F-28 were already sharpening their claws. To speed up the work on the aircraft, the already existing elements of the 727s were actively used. Strictly speaking, there's no question about the external similarity. As a power plant, Boeing selected the Pratt & Whitney JT8D. Those engines had proven themselves, and the company already had a ton of experience in operations with them. The 737s were assembled at the Boeing Field plant in Seattle, as the main Renton factory was busy. However, the production of the aircraft was not very convenient there, and after the delivery of 271 liners, the production nevertheless was transferred to Renton, and it's still located there. The first 6 prototypes began to fly in 1967. Models 737-100 were certified fairly quickly and delivered to the Lufthansa. 21 aircraft with a total cost of $67 million. Funny, now for $67 million you can hardly buy at least one new plane. Actually, the Model -100 was not a jackpot, only 30 units were made. Model -200 was finished and delivered to the United Airlines in 1968. At first the aircraft sales were not very successful. If in 1969 114 aircraft were delivered, in 1972 they only managed to sell 22. In the early 1970s, deliveries were so bad that the company considered stopping the production and selling the documentation to the Japanese. However, when the Project 2707 was closed and the Boeing 747 release was postponed, Boeing freed up the resources and allowed the work to continue. Sales were boosted by the improvement programs and the creation of cargo versions. In total, Boeing delivered over 1,100 planes of the Model 200. Boeing 737 Classic. In the late 1970s, a large-scale modernization work began. Customers needed more capacious aircraft with longer range. The good old JT8D were too weak for the new plane. Then the brand new CFM56 from CFM International came in handy. These engines proved to be quite suitable for upgraded vehicles. Well, relatively suitable. The bonus of the Boeing 737 were the low-mounted engines and their convenient maintenance. Just open the hood and there it is, right in front of you. The problem was the new CFM56 did not fit in there. They had to modify the engines and the wing, but it was worth it. Fuel consumption dropped by almost 25%, and in general, CFM56 is native for Boeing 737 to this day. The fuselage of the Model -300 became almost 3 meters longer, with a capacity of 149 people. The wingspan also increased by half a meter. The Classic family received the first glass cabin, developed at the time for the Boeing 757. The Boeing 737-300 prototype was exactly the 1001st aircraft of the family. It made its maiden flight in 1984. By the end of the 80s, Model -400 was raised to the sky, accommodating 188 people. Model -500 was a direct replacement for the old Model -200. Now this generation is known as the 737 Classic. Also, this name had already appeared in the 1990s, when Boeing developed the next generation. Boeing 737 Next Generation. In 1987, the vacation time ended for Boeing. The Airbus A320 was released. Despite skeptical stories about inexperienced new corporation, the new airplane was very effective. Boeing had to climb down from its throne and start creating a new generation. The company decided not to waste time on the little work. In 1991, the guys from Seattle announced the creation of 4 modifications at once: -600, -700, -800 and -900. This entire gang was called the Next Generation. The planes were redesigned quite seriously. The new wing with a new profile had a span with almost 5 additional meters. Its area grew by a quarter. The aircraft began to carry almost 30% more fuel, which increased the range. The engines were left the same, but seriously modernized. The onboard systems, as it is already usual, the kid borrowed from the older brother. This time not from 757s, but the newest 777s. The first plane, 737-700, was released in 1996, and it was the 2843rd aircraft of the family. Soon it was joined by 8 brothers in the generation. 10 planes were running through the certification program at once. Generation NG was very successful. Actually, almost all current aircraft belong to this generation. In 2006, Southwest Airlines received the 5,000th Boeing 737 airliner. The mark of 6,000 planes was overcome in 2009. The 8,000th board was delivered to the United Airlines in 2014. In 2018, Boeing delivered the 10,000th plane of the Model 737. Boeing 737 MAX. At the beginning of the 21st century, Boeing considered the issue of creating a completely new airliner to replace the 737 model. The aircraft was supposed to be built using the technologies of the Boeing 787. However, the creation of the Airbus A320neo did not give time for such luxury. It was necessary to think quickly. As a result, it was decided to create an updated generation with the new engines and a number of innovations to improve the performance of the aircraft. The new generation received the name MAX. The first deliveries of Boeing 737 MAX began in 2017. The aircraft are equipped with the CFM LEAP-1B engines. I will not talk about them in detail. This plane deserves a separate video. Structurally, Boeing 737 is a classic modern single-aisle airliner. Actually, it was one of the first aircraft with such a scheme. I see no reason to describe its basic design, since it is almost the same for all planes of this type. However, there are also curious moments. For example, the landing gear. If you look closely at the 737 flying in the air, you can see the wheels. The fact is that the doors of the main landing gear under the wing do not cover it completely. The wheels remain open. This slightly worsens the aerodynamics, but reduces the mass and the number of mechanisms. Other planes of this class do not go for such tricks. Another trick is the engine design. Initially, the aircraft was equipped with fairly narrow Pratt & Whitney JT8D, and everything was good. But the CFM56 engines were large and didn't fit under the wing. As a result, they had to be altered, moving some of the systems from the bottom to the sides. This is noticeable visually. The engines look slightly flattened. The newest LEAP 1B from the Boeing 737 MAX is even bigger, and it took about the same amount of work. The cabin was completely redesigned twice. In the beginning, it was conventional cabin with analog instruments. The classic generation brought electronic systems and displays. And now the MAX generation has brought the large screens to the plane, right from the 787. The wingtips of the aircraft also changed several times. In the beginning, even on the model -200, they were small and rarely installed. On the generations of classic NNG, the usual large winglets appeared. And with the coming of MAX generation, we saw new blended winglets, which according to the creators, can reduce fuel consumption by 5% in comparison with the wing without them. I would like to note that such tips are not exclusive for MAX. The similar wingtips are also actively installed on the modern NG liners. And of course the interiors. Unlike many basic elements of the design, which remain from generation to generation, the interiors are being renewed almost entirely. All that remains is a 6 seats in a row scheme. In the classic generation, aircraft got interiors from the 757s, and in the generation NG and MAX, the cabin inherited the sky interior style from the Dreamliner. As a result, we have 4 generations of Boeing 737. 737 Original, the first series of airliners, including models 737-100 and -200. 737 Classic, the second generation, which includes models -300, 400 and 500. 737 Next Generation NG, the third generation, including model -600, 700, 800 and 900. 737 MAX, the last fourth generation, including models MAX 7, MAX 8, MAX 9 and MAX 10. In addition to commercial versions, this aircraft of course has the VIP modifications, Boeing Business Jet (BBJ). The first business jets were built on the basis of the NG generation in the late 1990s, and today these planes are the basis of the Boeing business jet line. After a while, they will be replaced by the business versions of the MAX generation aircraft. Boeing at various times created several military modifications for the US Air Force, and those planes are in service now. Finally, the operations. Boeing 737 is the most popular passenger aircraft in the world. By 2018, these aircraft are in the parks of more than 500 airlines from 190 countries. Since 1966, more than 10,000 aircraft have been delivered, nearly 5,000 of which are still in service. According to statistics, every 5 seconds in the world, one Boeing 737 takes off or lands. In total, during its operations, aircraft flew about 120 billion kilometers, spent in the sky over 296 million hours, about 34,000 years, and transported more than 12 billion passengers. In fact, for now, every fourth jetliner in the world is Boeing 737. During the entire period of operation, 368 serious accidents occurred with the family's liners. 184 accidents were disastrous, causing nearly 4,800 deaths. Boeing 737 was hijacked 111 times. According to flight safety statistics, between 1959 and 2013, planes of the original family had 1.75 air crashes per million flights. In the classic family, this figure dropped to 0.54, while for the next generation it did not exceed 0.27. Boeing annually produces about 480 Boeing 737s a year, and the production volumes continue to grow. The planes are manufactured at the plants in Renton and on the joint platform of Boeing and Comac in China. This project was started as a local enterprise to develop a small plane for a few airlines. Now it has become the most massive and epic step in the industry. And that was its story, which doesn't plan to end. Like, subscribe and watch other videos. Fast flights and soft landings to you!